The Red Wedding, the Purple Wedding, Ned Stark's execution. Every one of them can be traced back to a boy who fell in love with the wrong woman. This is the real story of Petyr Baelish and Catelyn Tully. In the great castles of Westeros, names mattered: Stark, Lannister, Baratheon, Targaryen. But Petyr Baelish belonged to none of them. His family came from the smallest of the Finger Islands, barely noble, barely important, a minor house from a cold and rocky shore. Even his nickname was an insult, Littlefinger. Yet somehow, this insignificant boy would grow into one of the most dangerous men in the history of Westeros, and it all began at Riverrun. When Petyr was young, his father sent him to Riverrun to be raised as a ward of House Tully. There Petyr met 3 children, Hosta Tully's daughters, Catelyn and Lysa, and their wild younger brother, Edmure. Petyr grew up beside them. He laughed with them, ate with them, dreamed beside them. But while Catelyn treated Petyr like a younger brother, Petyr slowly fell in love with her. Not childish affection, not harmless admiration, something deeper, more dangerous. Because in Westeros, love was never just love. It was power, blood, marriage, alliance. And Petyr Baelish had none of it. Catelyn Tully was everything Petyr could never reach. Beautiful, noble, graceful, the daughter of one of the great houses, raised to become the wife of a powerful lord. But there was another girl at Riverrun as well, Lysa Tully, Catelyn's younger sister. She loved Petyr Baelish with all her heart, completely, desperately. But Petyr barely looked at her. His eyes were fixed on only one person, Catelyn Tully. But eventually, the man chosen for her was Brandon Stark, the heir to Winterfell, older brother of Eddard Stark, a warrior, a swordsman, a man born to rule the North. To Catelyn, the engagement was duty. To Petyr, it was the end of his dream. But Petyr refused to accept reality. He convinced himself that Catelyn loved him too. Maybe not openly, maybe not yet, but someday she would choose him. This obsession only grew as Catelyn slowly drifted away from Petyr. Because Brandon was everything Petyr was not. Tall, strong, confident, and Petyr hated him for it. Not because Brandon had harmed him, but because Brandon existed. Because the moment Brandon Stark entered Riverrun, Petyr already knew he could never compete. Jealousy began to consume him. One night, after drinking too much wine, Petyr believed he was with Catelyn, but it was Lysa. And afterward, Lysa became pregnant. When Hosta Tully discovered the truth, he was furious. The child was aborted, and Petyr's position at Riverrun became even more fragile. But still, he could not let Catelyn go. Then came the moment that changed everything. Petyr Baelish challenged Brandon Stark to a duel, not because he believed he could win, but because he believed love demanded it. Catelyn begged Brandon not to kill him, so Brandon agreed to spare the boy. The duel took place beside Riverrun, and it was not even close. Brandon Stark cut Petyr again and again and again. The younger boy fought bravely, but bravery meant nothing against a full-grown northern warrior. Petyr was driven backward, step by step, until finally Brandon opened his flesh with a terrible cut. Littlefinger collapsed onto the ground, bleeding, broken, humiliated. And then came the cruelest moment of all. Above him stood Brandon Stark, the man Petyr could never become. Young, strong, noble, the future Lord of Winterfell. A sword rested against Petyr's throat, and nearby stood Catelyn Tully, the woman he loved. Not running to him, not choosing him, begging Brandon Stark to spare his life out of pity. In that moment, Petyr Baelish lost more than the duel. He lost his pride, his dream, and whatever remained of the innocent boy who once believed love could overcome birth and power. And before leaving, Brandon spared his life. That mercy would become one of the greatest mistakes in Westerosi history. Most men would have let the wound heal. Petyr Baelish never did, because on that riverbank, a boy died, and Littlefinger was born. From that moment onward, Petyr learned a terrible lesson. In Westeros, noble blood mattered more than love, strength mattered more than loyalty, birth mattered more than intelligence. So he would stop playing by the rules. If swords could not defeat great houses, then lies would. If noble birth could not raise him, then chaos would. Because chaos wasn't the enemy. Chaos was the weapon. In a broken world, a man with nothing to lose has everything to gain. Years later, the same broken boy from Riverrun would manipulate kings, start wars, betray friends, destroy families, and all of Westeros would pay the price. There is a cruel irony hidden inside this story. Brandon Stark died young, executed by the Mad King. Catelyn married Eddard Stark instead, and Petyr Baelish spent the rest of his life trying to possess what he could never truly have. Not just Catelyn, but the world that had rejected him. In the songs of Westeros, wars begin with kings, but sometimes kingdoms fall because one lonely boy could not let go of a childhood love. And that is the real story of how Littlefinger began. This is The Real Westeros, the stories HBO left behind.